Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steehn with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with day number 516 of our NFL draft coverage. And no, it just seems that way. And yes, we have milked it a little bit because, you know what? Right now it's really about the only game in town. So we're going to take a last look at the NFL draft, look at some of our winners and some of our losers. And of course, I wouldn't be complete without doing it with my one and only partner out there all the way from Long Island, New York. He is Scott Reichel. Scott, how are you today?
Doing pretty well. It's still desperate times in sports when the biggest game is not even a game at all. It's the NFL draft, but that's
I
everything
know.
everybody wants to talk about. But either or, yeah, draft is finally over, but we figured we could recap it. And I don't know about you, I was actually pleasantly surprised with how good the virtual draft was, with the exception of all the musical notes they threw in there. Seemed like every hour, which you just don't need. You don't really need some random people singing on their piano at home. I don't need that. I know that they want to try to provide some uplifting spirit by bringing on some celebrities. Please no. Just it's time to stop. We're not there to listen to a makeshift concert over a couple of hours. We're there to stare at a blank screen for 8 minutes at a time, waiting for people's names to come across the screen. So of course, finding ways to fill airtime during the draft is a bit of a struggle. But I actually thought ESPN did a pretty good job overall. Even though Goodell seemed like he was falling asleep after every pick past the third round.
Scott Reichel, everybody, grumpy beyond his
I
years.
said it was fine. I thought overall it wasn't that bad. I found it kind of funny. It seemed like every time Goodell made an announcement, he messed up something. But it was still fun. I thought it was going to be worse. That's how I'd phrase it.
Well, very good. Scott, I've got two of my winners here are two of the teams that you follow. Your two teams. You're a Jets fan. You're a Cowboys fan. You know what? Start us off. Tell us tell us what you think of the Cowboys draft.
Well, I was actually going to say I had them two in my winners as well, which is a true sign of what time we're in. We're in the middle of a borderline apocalypse, and the Cowboys and the Jets both had a good draft. So I don't really know if that's par for the course at this point, but it's definitely a unique circumstance with both of them. I'll start with the Cowboys here. Of course, everyone knows about the CeeDee Lamb acquisition, even though it wasn't a position of need. When CeeDee Lamb falls into your lap, you pretty much have to take him. And plus, since the Eagles were in threat to potentially trade up for him after the Cowboys ended up selecting a defensive back, they pretty much had no choice but to take CeeDee Lamb. They got him in the first round. They got Trayvon Diggs, who was rumored to be a first-round pick, got him in the second to help the secondary. They got defensive tackle out of Oklahoma in Gilmore, who's pretty solid, who should help the front. Reggie Robinson, the second, very solid corner for a fourth-round spot. They got my personal sleeper in Biadish from Wisconsin at the center spot to replace Travis Frederick. They got some defensive end help with regard to Bradley Anai at Utah. And the quarterback in the seventh round, that's pretty much just a pass for me. Don't really know much about him. Of course, you might need some quarterback depth chart just help, even though he's going to be competing for a roster spot overall. But the Cowboys definitely helped out their defense. From the second round to the fifth round, they only took defensive guys, which I thought was a pretty smart move. And CeeDee Lamb falling to 17 was arguably the steal of the first round, probably with the Cardinals taking Isaiah Simmons at 8. So for me, I got no issues with the Cowboys draft. Jerry Jones should do his drafts on private yachts for the rest of time. That's my thought.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I liked. CeeDee Lamb, you couldn't pass him up in that spot. And I really like their third rounder that they got from Oklahoma, Gallimore. That kid is already a fantastic run stopper. They need to teach him a few moves, and he could be an actual. I don't know if they have 3 down linemen anymore, but he could actually contribute to the pass rush. So yeah, I think I think the Cowboys did a very good job. That's it's very un-Cowboy like. And speaking of even a bigger surprise was your New York Jets there, buddy. They ended up getting Becton. Now, there's some question about how well Becton's actually going to be able to defend there as far as keep the pass rush out. Pass block is the word I'm looking for. With better competition, he didn't do a great job on pure passing downs in Louisville, but my goodness, he has generational physical tools. He's got incredible athleticism, 6'7", 360. They picked him up in the first round. What are your thoughts on Becton?
I like him. The main issue that I have is based on the flag drug test, and I thought that his draft stock would slide as a result. Overall, I still thought Wirfs was a little bit better than Becton, so I was a bit surprised that Becton ended up going first. But he already talked about it. Based on the physical nature of Becton alone, the upside is higher than any other offensive lineman. Becton, just based on his build and his strength, could easily become a top tackle in the league, and I feel like that's a no-brainer. So if you're drafting based on upside, then I think Becton was the choice, so I can't really criticize the pick there when his ceiling is significantly higher than every other tackle ceiling in the draft. Other than that, the Jets traded down in the second round, 11 picks, and still got Denzel Mims, so that was kind of remarkable. I'm not really sure why Mims fell so much. It was rumored to drops, but as a whole, Mims was a fringe first rounder according to mock drafts and ended up going in the second round in the 50s. So I thought that was pretty much a steal. Ashton Davis at California is a pretty good pick. Zuniga along with Pirine from Florida, pretty solid combo. And Bryce Hall in the 5th round from Virginia was absolutely nuts.
Incredible.
I know he's coming in off ACL injury, and that was the main reason why he fell. When healthy, Hall was probably a first-round pick.
Absolutely.
And you got him in the 5th round.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Ashton Davis was probably the best single high safety in the draft, and that's going to fit in well with the Jets system. I think they did a great job, and picking up Bryce Hall, especially if that knee's good.
Yeah, even the punter. They got Brandon Mann, who was the best punter in the entire draft. And even though people might make fun of teams, particularly the Buccaneers, for taking Aguayo so early and Janikowski going early with the Raiders with field goal kicking and stuff, I know that punters are different, but I'm going to group special teams for just this brief comment. People underestimate how important special teams are, and it amazes me how they underestimate it every time. People always claim, kickers aren't real players and they don't tackle and they don't whatever. When you have a good field goal kicker, you win more games. When you have a good punter and you can pin teams deep, you win more games. And that's definitely something that other teams, whether or not you want to admit it or not, you could have a great offense, you could have a great defense. If your special teams is awful, shout out to the Chargers for the last roughly 10 years, you tend to lose some close games. And I feel like picking up a punter who I believe he averaged like 50 yards a punt, I think, with Texas A&M last year. Something like that.
Actually, 18 was his good year.
Okay.
He was 51 yards in 2018. He won the Ray Guy Award. He led the nation in punting. And then last year he fell off a little bit and averaged just 47 yards.
Yeah, but with those averages, 6th round, that's a pretty good acquisition as well, even though it's a punter and people aren't going to glorify punters.
I agree. So who else did you have on your winners list, Scott?
All right. So the couple other winners, no particular order. I got the Ravens. I feel like the Ravens might have arguably had the best draft. Patrick Queen fell into their laps. I had that in my mock draft, but either or, I thought that was a tremendous pickup. J.K. Dobbins, I don't know if they really needed him because they ended up getting Justice Hill last year. But at the end of the day, Mark Ingram's had injury issues. Gus Edwards can take over the big back stuff. And Dobbins is still a really good running back, and I feel like you can't pass him up in the late second. You get a defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but he's still very talented. They got Duvernay, who's a huge sleeper in the late 3rd. Malik Harrison out of Ohio State, pretty good linebacker there to help some depth. And they also ended up getting James Proche at the end of the 6th round. Pretty solid receiver as well for that spot. I just really love what Baltimore did. I feel like they didn't take any risks on any real prospects, and they also helped shore up the depth. So I really can't complain about anything they did in the draft.
Very good. And I've also got Miami on that list. I thought Miami did a great job. They ended up picking up Tua without having to move up in the draft, without having to trade anything. They picked up Austin Jackson as their tackle to protect him. And they got that cornerback that the kid out of Auburn. I'm going to give it one shot. Noah Igbenogany. How about that?
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. You were definitely preparing that in the mirror before we started.
I wrote it out phonetically, my friend.
That's the secret. If you're a broadcaster or anything at home, write the last names out phonetically if you can't pronounce it.
Listen to someone say them. Go to YouTube, find a video of the name being pronounced correctly, and then write it out phonetically.
Yes, that's how I did it during my broadcasting career. It was a brief broadcasting career.
Another guy that's great in press coverage is that he's just fantastic. man-to-man coverage, not
Yeah.
so great with the ball skills, but he's going to be very good for what they need him for. I love I love that edge rusher they got from Boise State, Curtis Weaver.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a great job. Anything else about the Miami draft stand out to you?
Are you kidding me? They drafted a long snapper. That's a top-tier draft right there. I don't know how you can no, overall, seriously, Miami did a really good job based on the picks that they had. I was not as high on the Austin Jackson selection. I just thought it was a bit of a reach at that spot. I know that according to what I've heard from about Austin Jackson is that he has the potential to be a really good tackle, but he's kind of a project, and he should be really good in, I'd say, about 2 years or so, according to most mocks and most analysts, etc. And I feel like it's a dangerous proposition when you're relying on a developmental tackle to protect your somewhat injury-prone quarterback of the future. So I think that's a little bit concerning. But assuming Jackson turns into the tackle that he's projected to be, the upside there is tremendous. But I thought 18 was a little bit early. I thought they could have potentially traded down, gotten him in the early 20s. But overall, cornerback from Auburn, I also had a bit of a question with. Even though he's very talented, Miami didn't really need a corner. They just paid Byron Jones a ton of money, and they signed Xavier Howard to an extension. And even though you need a slot corner, I felt like there were more positions of need that they could have gone after, probably a pass rusher because their defensive line, even though they got Weaver later on, I mean, the defensive line's terrible. They probably could have gone for a pass rusher in the first. But I liked Miami's draft. I still had a couple question marks with the other 2 first-round picks they had, with the exception of Tua. But overall, can't really argue with that. I thought Miami did pretty well.
All right. Who else did you have on your winners list?
Other than that, I had the Arizona Cardinals, who I thought had a really good draft. Isaiah Simmons, even though they need an offensive lineman, you can't turn down Isaiah Simmons with the 8th pick. I mean, that is a dream scenario right there. Carolina ended up taking Derek Brown, which I understand it's a pass-rushing league, and you need to dominate the trenches. A part of me was surprised Carolina did not end up drafting Simmons, especially after Kuechly retired. I figured you can just move Simmons into the linebacker spot, let him command the defense, work from there. But Arizona, despite needing an offensive lineman, got one of the most versatile defensive players, probably a top 3 prospect according to most people's big boards at 8. So I thought that was an absolute steal. Then Josh Jones, who was a borderline first-round pick fringe-wise, ended up falling to them in the 3rd round. Absolute steal. I thought that was a great pick. Other than that, Evan Weaver out of California, he's a bit slow, tremendous leader, assuming he can actually make the roster, and he's a very solid tackler. bit slow, though, in open space, but he was very good in California. I think he'll do pretty well over there, assuming that he can make the roster. He should be a nice leader, and I think he can give this team pretty solid snaps from the linebacker position. And even though they didn't really need a running back, Eno Benjamin falling to the 7th round is an absolute joke. I'm not really sure how he fell to the 7th. Plus, he's from Arizona State, and he's playing for Arizona now, so it's relatively local. So I don't really think there's much of an issue with regard to that. At the spot available, I thought that was a steal as well. So I give props to Kingsbury and the staff. I thought they did a pretty good job.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, very solid draft for the Cardinals as well. It's going to be a heck of a competitive division out there in the NFC West, to be sure. All right, so let's go down and check out losers. I guess there's one elephant in the room, and I'll start with it with the Packers. I think that basically wasted their first 3 picks, picking up a backup quarterback in Bryce Love and a running back and a tight end. Scott, give me your thoughts on the Packers.
I don't know where to start. That's the problem. There's a lot to get to here. I'll start out with Jordan Love. Do I like the pick? No. I think that for a team that just made the NFC Championship game, you should be trying to get reinforcements instead of immediately preparing for the future, despite how soon that might come. I know that Aaron Rodgers might have regressed a little bit recently. He still led to the NFC Championship game, and he's still a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't really know how you draft his replacement in the first round when you pretty much have no wide receivers besides Devontae Adams, and you just decide to draft a backup quarterback. And then to compound that issue, how do you draft a backup running back when your best player was your running back this past season and Aaron Jones? I know he's due a massive amount of money, and maybe you don't want to pay him, but I thought it was way too early for A.J. Dillon. And I think if you wanted a replacement for Jones, you could have gone after a J.K. Dobbins or somebody like that So fit-wise, I don't really understand the A.J. Dillon move. I do like A.J. Dillon as a running back, and I watched a decent amount of his games from Boston College. But I thought that spot alone was questionable. I thought Dillon was still going to be in the board roughly the third or fourth round. I thought they could have got him later. And then, of course, the main issue that you have, which I mentioned before, it wasn't just the first round. If you're Green Bay, how do you not draft a wide receiver in the entire draft?
I don't understand it.
I don't know how that happens. I mean, Green Bay stated before the draft, we're not going to be one of those teams that just waits around for a wide receiver and see what happens. And technically they were right because they didn't take a wide receiver. So I don't really know what they were doing from that perspective. If wide receiver is your biggest need, of course the draft is a crapshoot and you kind of have to guess on who you think is going to turn into a good prospect. But if you need wide receivers, shouldn't you at least throw a flyer on a wide receiver at some point? That's always my thought. I don't know why you wouldn't draft a wide receiver.
Maybe they've still got some moves they're planning for free. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're going to do. If I was Rodgers, I would definitely be a little bit angry.
I would definitely too. In terms of moves, it seems like no team wants to touch Antonio Brown, but that's a potential option. Just a thought. I mean, if you wanted to try to go through that route, not a great draft for Green Bay, and I'm not really sure what they were thinking on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you on Green Bay. Very, very weird draft. I've also got Seattle on the list as far as not great picks. Probably the biggest reach of the first round was Jordan Brooks there from Texas Tech. I think most people had him slated as a late second, early third round pick. And he's a good tackler, but he's just not going to be able to make plays in space or play in coverage. What do you think about the Seahawks?
I'm on the same page as you. I thought their draft was terrible. Now, I know Pete Carroll is known for finding hidden gems late in the draft from people you might not have heard of, and I understand that. So there is a potential that some of these players in the later rounds could turn out to be really good. Having said that, Pete Carroll's track record in the first round is a disaster. If you've looked at who he's drafted in the first round in previous drafts, it's absolutely abysmal. And I think taking Jordan Brooks here is kind of laughable, if I'm being honest here. I know Brooks, no offense to him, was really productive at Texas Tech. The issue is that he was never healthy, which is why his draft stock slid. And I thought he should have been available bare minimum in the first half of the second round, probably the entire second round. So if you really wanted him, you could have potentially traded up in the second round to get him while drafting an AJ Epinesa or somebody like that, Gross Matos, a defensive end, or somebody to help your pass rush. I thought that definitely would have been a smarter move. Maybe the Seahawks see something in Brooks that I don't or that we don't. At the end of the day, Seattle, it seemed like every time they had a pick, they were drafting somebody who either A, I never heard of, or B, somebody who was projected to go well later on. So maybe Seattle just drafted people based on what they liked, but it doesn't mean that they got good value for pretty much any of their picks based on where the people were selected. And I think that was the biggest issue with their draft.
Agreed. And who else did you have on your list there of losers, Scott?
This might, of course, we can't get through the losers without mentioning the Eagles. I mean, there's no way that you can't mention the Eagles here. I know that the day 3 of the draft for the Eagles was pretty good, and they did draft a couple wide receivers and inside linebacker. So day 3, I'll give them props. I thought they did a pretty good job day 3. I have no idea how you draft Rieger over Jefferson, and I have no idea how you draft Jalen Hurts in the second round. It makes no sense to me. And I know that some Eagles fans are justifying it, saying, well, Carson Wentz can't stay healthy. We need a backup quarterback. It's important. And I understand that having a backup quarterback is important. How did you prioritize backup quarterback for a mobile quarterback who has accuracy issues over an inside linebacker? Or even if you wanted to get some pass rushing depth or some offensive line depth because Peters left and you wanted to do something there, that's fine. But I have no idea how you reach in the second round for Hurts that early. Just to put it into comparison, there were some draft props available on DraftKings, I believe, and it was which team would draft Jalen Hurts, right? So you had some favorites. You had the Colts. You had some other teams, that need a quarterback. You want to guess what the price was in the Eagles to take Jalen Hurts?
4,000 plus
100
40.
to 1.
Huh?
100 to 1.
100 to 1.
100 to 1, which is just – I know betting markets aren't exactly a good indicator of that, but that just shows that the Eagles did not need a quarterback, especially after paying Wentz roughly $100 million. I thought that day one and early part of day two was a disaster. Rieger can still turn out to be decent, but I don't know how you don't take Jefferson there.
Yeah, I don't know. And they didn't really address their edge rusher until the 7th round. They took Casey Toohill out of Stanford. So
Yeah.
I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Yeah, that's a very, very strange draft for the Eagles. And I got to say, one of the ones on my list, and not really losers, but kind of a meh draft. I really didn't love the Chiefs draft. They did certainly pick up a good running back in Edwards-Helaire there. I think is going to be just fine. But as I'm thinking about this over the weekend, Scott, the last thing you want to do if you're the Kansas City Chiefs is encouraging Patrick Mahomes to throw more to his backs, as well as he throws down the field. You don't really want him checking down. You want him moving the ball, stretching the field vertically. And, he may be tempted to check down a little sooner because he knows how much Edwards-Helaire is going to be good. Yeah, I don't love it. Willie Gay at linebacker in the 2nd round for the Chiefs. Disciplinary problems. It doesn't always work out well. It didn't work out well with Marcus Peters ultimately for the Chiefs, and we'll have to see. Anybody that punches a teammate, I don't know. What do you think of Willie Gay?
I think he's okay. I mean, the character issues are definitely a concern. You've seen issues with that in the past. However, there have been some players who have had character issues, not necessarily fighting with teammates, but who have had issues, whether it's with drug stuff or anything in college, and they've turned out to be pretty good players. But Tyrann Mathieu ended up turning out to be really good. You've had some examples where some people with drug test issues and stuff like that have had problems. Plus, there's rumors that Charles Haley and some other legendary players have been awful teammates as well. They've still been really productive. I'm not preparing Gay to Haley. I'm just saying just because a player has character issues doesn't mean you should immediately pencil them off as being a wasted draft pick. So I think that only time will tell on there. I do agree from to a certain degree, especially with the Helaire pick. I do like him, but then why did you bring back Damian Williams and all your running backs if you were just going to draft one in the 1st round? I just didn't really understand that logic. I'm going to give the Chiefs a pass, though, because they did bring back pretty much the entirety of their team, especially on offense. So I feel like the draft was kind of just for some reinforcements or some depth pieces. I don't think many of them are going to make the roster. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I thought the Chiefs draft was okay. I didn't put it as a losers because I thought that some other teams had worse drafts. They didn't wow me, if that's what you mean. But I didn't think that they were one of the worst 4 drafts, so to speak.
All right, well, give me a bad draft, and give me another one.
I got to mention the Raiders. I mean, there's no way that I can avoid the Raiders if I was going to mention the draft losers. Taking Ruggs over Judy and Lamb is definitely a bold move, to say the least. So let's see if that pays off for him. But, would I have done that? No. Am I surprised it took Ruggs? No. We talked about before, and in my mock draft here, I said they would take Ruggs because they tend to be distracted by speed and athleticism, and I think that was definitely a move. The one thing there are a couple of moves there. Would I have taken Ruggs first? No. Would I have taken a projected 3rd-round corner with their 19th pick? No. Would I have taken 3 wide receivers in their first 4 picks in the draft? No. I don't really know how you can have back-to-back picks in the 3rd round and take 2 straight wide receivers. I don't think I've seen that, and that kind of blows my mind. They got Lynn Bowden Jr. from Kentucky, who ended up playing quarterback for a little while because they had no quarterbacks, and they pretty much threw him into a wildcat running system. I think he's a big playmaker. I mean, he's an okay receiver. If you're drafting him based on pure athleticism and everything like that, then that's a gamble in itself. I wasn't that high on Bowden. I thought that he had ability in college to create separation through a very unique system with 1 week to prepare. They kind of were trying to catch people by surprise like Navy, who just run triple option or whatever offenses that take weeks to prepare, and they just take advantage of teams that have 1 week to prepare. So I thought Bowden was an interesting pick. They got the South Carolina wide receiver who I do like. But how do you take 3 wide receivers in your first 4 picks and then take a 3rd-round corner in the 1st round as your other pick? I think that's a disaster.
Raiders gonna Raider, baby. Yeah, I didn't understand it, especially the Bowden pick. I thought that was very weird. If you watch Kentucky late in the season, that was something to see. That was
yeah. He's very dynamic with the ball in his hands. I don't know how good his hands are because he was literally taking snaps behind center for the last 6 games of the season.
Right.
So
Right.
I found that a little bit peculiar. You got any losers? I got one more.
Um, I didn't love the Chargers draft, starting with Justin Herbert.
Well, you know my thoughts about Herbert, so I'll let you have the floor on that one.
Well, we talked about Herbert ad nauseum. We didn't really believe he was a true first round talent, that he doesn't have. We don't think he's going to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. They did what they had to do, I guess. I don't know. I'd probably take Herbert over Love, but I don't love that pick. They did end up picking up Kenneth Murray. That was a nice pick, and then they didn't get another pick until the 4th round.
Well, they traded up to take Murray. I don't know if you were a fan of that move or not.
Yeah,
I thought it was smart at the time.
Yeah, they did what they had to do, and that's and I don't nothing about the rest of their draft really excites me too much. They traded away their 2nd and 3rd round pick, which I thought that might have been a little bit of a steep price. So we'll see what happens. I didn't hate Hill. He could end up being this steal there, the wide receiver there out of Ohio State. They took in the 7th round.
I was hoping the Jets would take him in the 7th round. Yeah, I think he has potential to be good. At least to provide some depth. I mean, the thing you have to wonder though is that the Raiders drafted. No, sorry, we're talking about the Chargers. Sorry about that. No, the Chargers overall, their defense was already set. Their offense had some question marks at quarterback, which they believe they addressed. I don't think they did. I think their offensive line could have used some fine tuning, which they could have done a better job at addressing. But overall, yeah, I mean, Herbert going that early definitely mars the draft grade because we're both very low on Herbert and we thought that the Chargers shouldn't reach to take him. I thought Herbert was, if he was going to be taken, I think he should have been taken in the 20s or maybe a fringe first rounder. I really just didn't like him. I'm not surprised he went that early, though. But I feel like the Chargers kind of were chasing fool's gold on that one.
Well, they drafted for need, and they didn't draft the best athlete available, and that's a cardinal sin of the draft.
Are you a bigger fan of Kenneth Murray or Patrick Queen?
Patrick Queen.
Same here. So I thought that when they traded up, I actually thought they're going to take Queen. But, is what it is, whatever. But the last loser I have is the Chicago Bears. This was mostly based on one pick. The rest of their draft wasn't exactly much to write home about either. I don't know how you take Cole Kmet there with your first pick in the draft. The first pick was in the 2nd round. They didn't have a first rounder. I had to figure out how to phrase this. By drafting Cole Kmet, they officially had 10 tight ends on their roster.
Right.
I don't even know how that's possible. How do you have 10 tight ends on your roster? I know that Cole Kmet's supposed to be good, and I think he is pretty good, and he's going to continue that Notre Dame tight end tradition with Tyler Eifert and some other people before that. Based on need, you just signed Jimmy Graham, and you just paid Jimmy Graham significantly more money than he's probably worth. What's the point? Why would you take him if you just signed a tight end to a massive deal in free agency?
Agreed.
I don't get it. I think Ryan Pace should have been fired last year. But, I don't get it. That's just my thoughts on the Bears. Their later round picks were okay. Wasn't much to write home about. I don't know how you sign Graham to that contract and then draft a tight end with your first pick in the draft.
Did almost nothing to add a playmaker there on offense to help.
But you already have a tight end. Why would you pay Graham that much money? You should have just taken a wide receiver if you need another playmaker.
Agreed.
I didn't get it, but those are my main losers on that one. In terms of if I had to say the biggest loser, actually this might surprise you. I actually included the Patriots on my loser list, which I didn't get to. I thought their draft was terrible. I know that New England's the kings of turning random people into Hall of Famers, and I get that. How do you trade up twice to draft 2 tight ends? I don't get it. I might be missing something. They draft a kicker with a white supremacist tattoo in the 5th round. I know that he apparently didn't know it was a controversial tattoo, and he plans on getting it taken care of and whatever. A kicker in the 5th round? I know that he can kick the ball far, but, I mean, he's got those character issues with the tattoos and stuff like that.
Right.
And I don't know. Trading up twice to draft 2 tight ends? I don't know. I might be missing something there, but I didn't get what New England was trying to do.
Well, and of course, taking Duggar with their first pick after they traded down. from Lenore Ryan. By the way, that's a D2 school. I looked that up.
I mean, I can't roast the D2 schools or the FCS schools because I was a fan of Chin. So I think if you're a good player wherever, then, it can work out. But I don't want to roast Belichick because I feel like that's just an ultimate way of karma just jumping back at you.
That didn't age well.
Yeah, based on history. I actually have no idea what New England was trying to do during the draft. Do you have any idea?
No, I think that, they did add a couple of edge rushers.
Tight ends are I know Asiasi can be good, but I don't get trading up for the second pick. And if you look at what they gave up to the Jets in order to even trade up, take the tight end from Virginia Tech, they gave up a boatload for that. They gave up multiple picks. I thought the Jets absolutely fleeced New England in that trade. And if you're getting fleeced by the Jets, I can't give you a good draft grade.
Agreed.
So those are my thoughts. But in terms of biggest loser, honestly, it's probably the Packers. I mean, that draft is an absolute just dumpster fire. You could argue the Eagles, but I did like their day 3. I thought their day 3 was pretty good. They got a lot of fast receivers who can definitely stretch a defense. I thought they did a pretty good job on day 3, but just day 1 and day 2 were disasters. I thought the Packers draft was a complete disaster the entire way because they drafted no wide receivers. They're probably my biggest loser of the draft.
Agreed. I have them as my biggest loser as well. All right, bud. Well, that brings to a conclusion our draft coverage of the 2020 draft. And we stay tuned, everybody, because we're going to kind of be winging it from here on out. I know we're going to be talking a little horse racing, a little esports. Scott, what else are we going to be talking about?
Well, we can go a little bit more in depth on some of the seasons potentially starting. I know the NBA officially opened up some training camp facilities for teams to start training. Hopefully, we'll hear some updates on baseball, etc. I know UFC is going to be coming back on May 9th. 3 cards in 8 days is the stuff that I crave, and that is definitely stuff that I definitely look forward to. Probably will end up doing another show. Either with Winning Willie or with somebody else. I know that we ended up trying to do a show before it ended up getting canceled. We definitely will be looking to bring that back. Other than that, though, watched The Last Dance along with most sports fans probably yesterday. I don't know if you watched it. You have any thoughts on that?
You know what? I just started it. I just started episode 1. I'm behind everybody else, so I will defer.
Okay, fair enough. I thought it was pretty good. It was mostly the 3rd episode was on Rodman mostly, and the 4th episode was on Phil Jackson mostly. I think it's good. Do I think you need 10 parts to talk about the Bulls? No. I think that's a little bit excessive. I mean, you found 5 parts to talk about OJ, and I feel like OJ was probably a more, I don't want to say interesting story, but definitely a more interesting character, so to speak. So if you can fit OJ into 5, I think you can probably fit the Bulls into 5. Is that a fair assessment?
Especially 1 season, yeah.
Yeah, especially well, the 1 season is a cop-out because it's 1 season, but they spend about, I'd say, 60% of each episode flashing back to stuff that happened previously. So it's 1 season, but it's not because most of the documentary talks about the origins as it should. So I feel like The Last Dance is a bit of a misleading title because they don't really spend as much time on the final season as people expect. I think that, of course, they will spend most of it on the final season once they actually get into the playoffs with the Jazz and all that other stuff. So I think that will be more common. Overall, I like the documentary. It's been entertaining. I mean, it's about Jordan, so I'm automatically invested. But people talk about how unbelievable this thing is and how it's one of the best documentaries that 30 for 30's ever done. I'll disagree on that, but it definitely is very entertaining.
All right, very good. So check that out for sure. And, we'll be talking a lot of interesting things in the future. So as always,
you got a favorite sports documentary there? A favorite 30 for 30 that sticks out to you?
I like the Bo Knows Bo.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely my top 3. I think you got that one. You got the Jimmy V Survive and Advance, and I'm a huge fan of the original U on the Miami in the early ones. I think those in terms of power rankings, those are probably my top 3 for 30 for 30s. There have been a couple of other ones that have slipped through the cracks that have also been pretty good, but I feel like those are, in my opinion, the best ones. You can argue for a Pony Excess one with SMU or some other teams in there, but I don't know. I'd say those are probably my top 3.
I'm smelling another show.
Probably. If we wanted to, we can definitely, work something with that. Are you a big documentary guy, or you're more of a movie?
Yeah, I like documentaries.
Any topics in particular? Are you a Making a Murderer fan or anything like that?
No, I'm more war stuff. I like a lot of Civil War stuff, a lot of World War II stuff. I can't
Nice.
I can't get enough of that. I'm a little bit of a conspiracy guy.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, so if you're a war person, does that mean that you ended up seeing like 1917? You've seen all these war movies and
I
stuff like that?
didn't get to see 1917, man. I was really disappointed I didn't get to see that at the theater. The virus kind of got the tail end of that run. I am looking forward to that movie because from a technical standpoint as well, that should be. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
I thought the cinematography was phenomenal.
That's what everything.
Yeah,
That's what.
it was definitely up to par based on all the. I believe it won an Oscar for cinematography.
Yes, absolutely. It was. That
But
was.
yeah, I heard going into the movie that everyone was talking about how great the cinematography was, and you figure every movie says that. Who cares? It's the effects, whatever. It's
Right.
noticeable. The effects are really good. The movie I thought honestly was a little bit overrated, just my personal opinion. I still thought it was pretty good. Cinematography is next level. It is peak cinematography.
Cool.
So
All
that's my
right.
thoughts on that. But
Very good. All right, Scott. Well, as always, thanks for doing this with me, man. It was a lot of fun to do the draft for the last week. We got some fun stuff coming up, so definitely stay tuned. As always, thanks to all of you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. Don't forget to check out winnersandwhiners.com. Still putting up great daily content over there, including Winning Willie on esports. He's on quite a heater over there, so check that out as well. I am, as always, Scott Steehn. He is Scott Reichel, and we will be back tomorrow with I don't know. We'll just have to see.
something,
We'll just have,
something.
we'll just have to see how that pans out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it. As always, stay safe, stay well, stay home. We'll get through it, and sports will be back before you know it. You guys take care. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.